The rain hammered against the funeral home windows like bullets against glass. I sat in the front row, staring at my daughter's casket, when my phone buzzed. The text message made my blood freeze. "Mom, it's me. I'm alive. Don't trust David. Meet me at our old spot tonight. Emma." My hands trembled as I read it again. Emma. My daughter. Lying in that wooden box just 15 feet away from me. Someone was playing the cruelest joke imaginable? Or was they? The funeral parlor smelled like lilies and lies. That's all I could think as I watched people file past Emma's casket, whispering their condolences like prayers to a God who wasn't listening. My 28-year-old daughter, my only child, my whole world, gone in what David called a tragic accident. "She fell down the stairs, Carol," he'd told me 3 days ago, his voice breaking in all the right places. "I found her at the bottom when I got home from work. The paramedics said. They said she died instantly. She didn't suffer. But mothers know things. We feel them in our bones, in the spaces between our heartbeats. And something about David's story felt wrong, like a sweater with the seams showing." The buzz of my phone cut through my grief like a knife. I almost ignored it. Who texts someone at their own daughter's funeral? But something made me look. Unknown number. The message that would haunt me forever. "Mom, it's me. I'm alive. Don't trust David. Meet me at our old spot tonight. Emma." I gasped so loud that Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbor, leaned over. "Are you all right, dear?" I showed her the screen with shaking hands. She squinted at it, then at me, then back at the phone. "Oh honey, grief does terrible things to our minds. Sometimes we see what we need to see." But this wasn't grief. This was real. The text was there, black letters on a white screen, as real as the tears streaming down my face. Our old spot. Only Emma and I knew about that place. When she was little, we'd sneak out to the old oak tree behind our house whenever her father and I fought. We'd sit there for hours, talking about everything and nothing, sharing secrets and dreams. After her father left when she was 12, it became our sanctuary. Even as an adult, whenever Emma needed to think or cry or just escape, she'd text me, "Meet me at our spot?" Nobody else knew about that tree. Nobody. I looked across the room at David, my son-in-law of 3 years. He stood near the back, accepting hugs and handshakes, playing the grieving widower perfectly. But as I watched him, I noticed something chilling: his eyes. They weren't red. They weren't swollen. For someone who claimed to have found his wife's broken body, he looked remarkably composed. The service felt eternal. Pastor Williams droned on about Emma being called home, while I clutched my phone, reading that impossible message over and over. Each time I looked up, David was watching me with those cold, calculating eyes. When it was finally over, when the last mourner had paid their respects and drifted away like smoke, David approached me. "Carol, I know this is hard, but we need to talk about Emma's things. The house, her belongings." His voice was soft, caring, but those eyes remained ice cold. "Not now, David." I couldn't look at him. "I need time." Of course. But just so you know, I'll be staying at my brother's place for a few days. The house holds too many memories." He squeezed my shoulder, and I had to fight every instinct not to recoil. "I'll call you in a week or so?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. As soon as he left, I was alone with the impossible. My daughter was dead. My daughter had texted me. Both things couldn't be true. But as I sat there in that empty funeral home, surrounded by the scent of flowers meant for the dead, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to that tree. The hours between the funeral and sunset crawled by like wounded animals. I sat in my kitchen, staring at that text message until the letters started to blur together. Part of me wondered if Mrs. Henderson was right. Maybe grief was making me see things that weren't there. But then I remembered the last time I'd seen Emma alive. 2 weeks ago. She'd come over for Sunday dinner, something she'd done religiously since marrying David. But that day was different. She seemed diminished somehow, like she was folding in on herself. "Are you eating enough, sweetheart?" I'd asked, noticing how her favorite dress hung loose on her frame. She'd forced a smile. "I'm fine, Mom. Just been busy with work." But her eyes told a different story. They held a sadness I'd never seen before, a kind of resignation that made my stomach clench with worry. "Emma, if something's wrong." "Nothing's wrong." The sharpness in her voice surprised both of us. She immediately softened. "Sorry, Mom. I'm just tired. David's been. It's been a stressful few months." David. Even then, something about the way she said his name bothered me. Like she was afraid of the word itself. I tried to dig deeper, but Emma had always been stubborn. She got that from me, unfortunately. Instead of talking, she'd changed the subject to my garden, asking about the tomatoes with an enthusiasm that felt forced. Now, sitting in my empty kitchen, I wished I'd pushed harder. I wished I'd seen the signs I was too blind to notice. The doorbell rang at 7:30, jolting me from my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw Detective Martinez, the officer who'd taken my statement about Emma's accident. "Mrs. Thompson," he said when I opened the door. "I'm sorry to bother you on such a difficult day. Could I come in for a moment?" My heart hammered against my ribs. Of course. He was a kind man, probably my age, with gentle eyes that had seen too much. He sat carefully on my couch, like he was afraid of breaking something. "I wanted to follow up about your daughter's case," he began. "I know your son-in-law explained what happened, but sometimes details come to light after the initial shock wears off. Is there anything else you can tell me about Emma's state of mind recently?" The question hung in the air between us. This was my moment. I could tell him about the text, about my suspicions, about the way David's grief felt performed rather than real. Instead, I heard myself saying, "She seemed distant lately." Quiet. Distant how? She used to call me every day. These past few months, it was maybe twice a week. And when she did call, she sounded. I searched for the right word. Scared. Detective Martinez leaned forward. "Scared of what?" "I don't know." She wouldn't say. But Emma was never secretive with me. We told each other everything. The lie sat bitter on my tongue. Clearly, we hadn't told each other everything. Did she ever mention any problems in her marriage? The question I'd been dreading. The question I'd been asking myself since that text arrived. "Not directly," I said carefully. "But I got the feeling things weren't perfect." "What marriage is, right?" He nodded, making notes in a small pad. "Mrs. Thompson, I have to ask. Do you think your daughter's death was accidental?" The room went silent except for the ticking of Emma's childhood clock on my mantelpiece. The clock she'd insisted I keep when she moved out, saying it would help her feel close to home. I started, then stopped. If Emma was really alive, if that text was real, then telling the truth could put her in danger. But if she was dead and I was chasing ghosts, then staying silent might let her killer go free. "I think," I said finally, "that my daughter deserves justice, whatever that looks like." Detective Martinez studied my face for a long moment. "If you think of anything else, anything at all, please call me." He handed me his card. "And Mrs. Thompson? Sometimes the people closest to us are the hardest to really see. Trust your instincts." After he left, I sat in the growing darkness, turning his words over in my mind. Trust your instincts. My instincts were screaming that something was wrong. That David was hiding something. That my daughter's death was anything but accidental. As the clock struck 9, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. If Emma was waiting for me at our tree, I wasn't going to let her down. And if she wasn't, well, at least I'd know I was going crazy in a place that held only good memories. The walk to the old oak tree behind my house took me through a minefield of memories. Emma at 5, climbing these same branches while I worried she'd fall. Emma at 15, crying under these same leaves after her first heartbreak. Emma at 25, telling me she was getting married to David under this same canopy of green. I'd liked David then. He was charming, successful, the kind of man any mother would want for her daughter. He worked in finance, made good money, treated Emma like a princess. At least that's how it seemed. But looking back now, with the clarity that only comes from loss, I started to see the cracks in the facade. The way he'd subtly redirect conversations away from Emma's interests. How he'd convinced her to quit her job as a teacher because, "We don't need the money, and I'd love to take care of you." The gradual isolation from her friends, explained away as natural changes that come with marriage. I should have seen it. God help me, I should have seen what was happening to my daughter. The oak tree stood exactly where it always had, its massive trunk scarred by decades of weather and time. As I approached, my heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. "Emma!" I called softly into the darkness. "Emma, are you here?" Silence. Just the whisper of wind through leaves and the distant hum of traffic. I waited for 20 minutes, then 30, then an hour. Nobody came. No mysterious figure emerged from the shadows to reveal this had all been an elaborate ruse to fake her death. No tearful reunion with my supposedly dead daughter. Just me, an old woman, talking to trees in the dark. I was about to leave when I noticed something carved into the bark at eye level. Fresh cuts, not yet weathered. DK 316. Look deeper, Mom. The answer is in the house. My legs nearly gave out. DK 316. It was a code Emma and I had developed when she was little, based on her initials and birthday. It stood for Danger Keep Away, something we'd use in our games of hide and seek. The fact that it was here, carved recently into our tree, meant Emma really had been here. Or someone who knew our childhood games intimately. The answer is in the house. But which house? Mine, or the one she'd shared with David? I took a photo of the carving with my phone, then hurried home. If Emma was alive, if she was in hiding, then I needed to be smart about this. I couldn't go charging into David's house demanding answers. I needed proof. But first, I needed to understand what had really been happening in my daughter's marriage. Back home, I pulled out every photo album, every card, every letter Emma had given me over the past 3 years. I spread them across my dining room table like evidence at a crime scene, looking for clues I'd missed the first time around. The changes were subtle but undeniable. In early photos with David, Emma's smile reached her eyes. She looked happy, radiant, in love. But as the months passed, something in her expression shifted. The smiles became smaller, more forced. Her posture changed, shoulders slightly hunched, as if she was trying to make herself smaller. In the last photo I had of them together, taken at Christmas just 4 months ago, Emma looked like a ghost of herself. Thin, pale, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. David, meanwhile, looked exactly the same as always. Confident, controlling, with his arm around Emma's waist like a claim of ownership. I found Emma's last birthday card to me, written in March. "Dear Mom, thank you for always being my safe harbor. No matter what happens, know that you taught me to be strong, to be brave, and to never give up hope. I love you more than words can say. Your daughter always, Emma." At the time, I'd thought it was sweet. Now, it read like a goodbye letter. My phone rang, startling me from my investigation. Unknown number. "Hello." I answered, my heart in my throat. Heavy breathing on the other end then. "Mom? Emma." The word came out as a sob. "I can't talk long. He might be listening. Did you find my message?" Yes, I found it." "Emma, where are you? What happened?" "Everyone thinks you're dead." "I know. It's better that way for now." "Mom. Listen carefully. David tried to kill me." The fall down the stairs. It wasn't an accident. He pushed me, but I managed to catch myself halfway down. I hit my head and blacked out for a few seconds, long enough for him to think it worked. My world tilted sideways. "What?" I played dead until he left to call 911, then I ran. "I've been hiding ever since. Mom, he's been planning this for months. He has a life insurance policy on me, and he's been poisoning me. Small amounts making me sick, making me weak. He wanted it to look like I was getting clumsy, accident-prone. The weight loss. The exhaustion. The fear in her eyes. Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "Because I was ashamed. Because I thought I could handle it. Because I was afraid you wouldn't believe me. He's so good at seeming perfect. And because..." Her voice broke. "Because he said if I told anyone, he'd hurt you too." Rage flooded through me like lava. Where are you now? Are you safe? I'm safe for now, but not for long. He's getting suspicious. I heard him on the phone earlier. He knows something's wrong. Mom, I need you to get something from the house. There's evidence hidden in. The line went dead. I called back immediately. The number was disconnected. My daughter was alive. My daughter was in danger. And her husband, the man I'd welcomed into our family, the man I'd trusted with my child's happiness, was a murderer. But Emma was strong. She was brave. She was fighting back. And now, so was I. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every creak of the house, every car that passed outside, could be David coming to silence me too. But I wasn't the same grieving mother who'd sat in that funeral parlor yesterday. I was a woman with a mission. At dawn, I called Detective Martinez. Mrs. Thompson? It's early. Is everything all right? I need to tell you something about my daughter's death. Something important. An hour later, he sat in my living room again, this time with a tape recorder and a very different expression on his face. I told him everything. The text messages. The phone call. The carved message on the tree. The gradual changes in Emma over the past months. My growing suspicion that David wasn't the grieving widower he pretended to be. Mrs. Thompson, Detective Martinez said carefully when I finished, these are very serious allegations. If your daughter is alive, if she's been threatened by her husband, then we need to find her before. My phone buzzed. Text message from unknown number. Turn on Channel 7 News. Now. We both stared at the screen. Then Detective Martinez reached for my remote. The breaking news banner read, "Local man arrested in wife's fake death plot." The reporter's voice filled my living room. David Chen, 32, was arrested early this morning on charges of attempted murder, fraud, and filing false police reports. Chen allegedly pushed his wife, Emma Thompson Chen, down a flight of stairs, then collected on her life insurance policy after staging her death. The victim, who survived the attack, has been in hiding for 3 days while gathering evidence against her husband. The screen cut to footage of David being led away in handcuffs. Gone was the composed, grieving husband. This man looked haggard, desperate, caught. Then the camera cut to Emma. My daughter. My beautiful, brave daughter, alive and standing in front of the police station with bandages on her forehead and fire in her eyes. I want other women to know, she was saying into the microphone, that isolation and control can happen gradually. So gradually that you don't realize you're being slowly killed until it's almost too late. I'm one of the lucky ones. I got away. I was sobbing and laughing at the same time, my heart simultaneously breaking and healing. Detective Martinez smiled. Would you like me to drive you to the station? I have a feeling your daughter would like to see you. The reunion was everything and nothing like the movies. When Emma saw me, she didn't run in slow motion across the police station. She didn't collapse dramatically into my arms. Instead, she looked up from the paperwork she was signing, saw my face and simply said, "Hi, Mom." But when I hugged her, really hugged her, feeling her heartbeat against mine, smelling her familiar shampoo, it was better than any movie scene ever filmed. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into my shoulder. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you. I'm sorry I put you through that funeral. I'm sorry I made you think I was dead." "Don't you dare apologize," I said fiercely. "You survived. You're here. That's all that matters." Later, over coffee in a diner far from the police station and the reporters, Emma told me the whole story. How David had become controlling gradually, so slowly she hadn't noticed at first. How the emotional abuse had escalated to physical threats, then to the slow poisoning that had weakened her for months. "The night he pushed me down the stairs, I realized he wasn't going to stop," she said. "When I woke up at the bottom and heard him on the phone saying I was dead, I knew I had one chance. I could stay and let him finish the job, or I could run and gather proof." "Where did you hide? Remember Mrs. Patterson from down the street? Your old book club friend?" I called her from a payphone and told her everything. She let me stay in her basement while I collected evidence. Banking records showing David's debts I didn't know about. Recordings of his phone calls to his insurance agent. Photos of the bruises he gave me that I'd hidden under makeup. Emma reached across the table and took my hand. "I also wrote you letters. Every day. Knowing I couldn't send them, but needing to tell you I was okay, that I loved you, that this wasn't your fault." She pulled out a stack of handwritten pages from her purse. I want you to have them. That night, in my own bed, in my own house, I read every single letter. They were heartbreaking and hopeful, desperate and determined. They were my daughter's voice, surviving in the darkness, finding her way back to the light. The last letter, written the night before David's arrest, ended like this. Mom, by the time you read this, it will all be over. One way or another. If something happens to me, know that you raised me to be strong enough to try. If I succeed, know that you raised me to be smart enough to survive. Either way, you gave me everything I needed to face this monster. Thank you for being my safe harbor. Always. Thank you for being my mom. I cried reading those words, but they were good tears. Healing tears. 3 months later, David pleaded guilty to attempted murder, domestic violence, fraud, and a dozen other charges. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Emma moved back in with me while she healed, both physically and emotionally. We went to therapy together. We planted new flowers in the garden. We had long conversations under the old oak tree, no longer hiding but celebrating the fact that we were both still here to have them. On what would have been her first wedding anniversary with David, Emma carved a new message into our tree. Survived. Stronger. Free. E&C. C for Carol. She included me because she said we'd both survived David's poison. We'd both found our way back to each other. Sometimes people ask me what the scariest part of those 3 days was. Was it thinking my daughter was dead? Was it realizing her husband was a killer? Was it not knowing if I'd ever see her again? The answer is none of those things. The scariest part was almost missing the signs. Almost failing to see that my daughter was crying for help in the only way she could. Almost accepting that her death was just a tragic accident instead of trusting the voice in my head that screamed something was wrong. The scariest part was how close I came to letting him win. But mothers know things. We feel them in our bones, in the spaces between our heartbeats. And sometimes, if we're very lucky and very brave, we listen to those feelings in time to save the people we love most. Emma is alive. Emma is free. Emma is home. And that text message, the impossible message that started it all, now sits framed on my mantelpiece, right next to Emma's childhood clock. A reminder that sometimes the most unbelievable truths are the ones we need to believe in most. I'm alive. Don't trust my husband. 5 words that saved my daughter's life. 5 words that brought her home. If you're reading this and something feels wrong in your relationship, trust that feeling. If you're watching someone you love grow smaller, quieter, more afraid, don't explain it away. Love shouldn't make you disappear. Marriage shouldn't feel like dying slowly. And if someone you care about sends you a message, even an impossible one, that doesn't make sense, listen anyway. Sometimes the craziest stories are the truest ones of all. Sometimes the dead do speak. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, they speak in time to save themselves.